hunting as it has become today. A cruel pastime, or else systematic massacring motivated by greed. A bloodbath administered in cold fury. Originally, however, the relationship between man and hunting was quite different. As far back as the remotest prehistoric times, reindeer and deer were a favorite prey. Scientists specialized in that period of human evolution frequently find in the caves that provided shelter for our hunting ancestors the remains of animals killed 10, 15, or even 20,000 years ago. The caveman's main source of food was through hunting. And to be sure of catching his prey, he relied not only on cunning and the perfecting of his weapons, but also, strange as it may seem, on painting. The figures of animals on the rocks. Pictures and carvings that were also, in their own way, cunning and weapons for hunting. Prehistoric man depicted these animals on the walls of his caves in order to catch them. The animals drawn on the rocks are often wounded by spears and arrows because, before the prey was actually hit, its symbolic representation had to be. All of this, as we said, thousands, many thousands of years ago. But even today, in those places where our planet still concedes boundless space to the last remaining so-called primitive groups, hunting continues to be a means of survival reinforced with magic, as we are going to see in this film, as we journey together beyond our civilized but sterile present to meet the last Aborigine hunters of Australia, African Bushmen, and the Amerindi Indians of Amazonia. Living pages from the archives of time. In the vast silence of northeast Australia, the Aborigine is a nomadic creature who sleeps in the open. To resist the extreme cold, the Aborigine's body has learned how to slow down its blood circulation. During the hours of sleep, the Aborigine's limbs are, to all intents and purposes, lifeless. Only in this way is he able to survive the dramatic changeover from the heat of the day to the chill of the night, typical of this little corner of the globe we have come to explore. Every time he wakes up, the Aborigine nomad has to move his limbs very slowly, one by one, to reactivate the circulation he managed to slow down by a mechanism akin to feedback. Gradually, the sun's warmth gives back strength to his muscles and his mind. He needs that strength of mind and body in order to dedicate himself to the activity that occupies his waking hours every day. The activity essential for his survival and that of his group. He feels weak and helpless in the face of the immensity and grandeur of nature. He therefore seeks comfort and help in magic working dances. Very often, before a particularly difficult hunting expedition, a group of Aborigines mimes the pursuit and catching of a buffalo, offspring of the sun, according to his mythology. The Aborigine hunter trembles when he must kill a prey that is so huge and so sacred. By himself, he dare not do it. He finds the courage he needs by invoking the spirits of his forebears and the secret powers of the invisible world. That is where he derives his strength. And that is what backs him up in the dread instant of killing. The archives of time still preserve in this part of the world proof of the survival of the rock paintings that exorcise the fear and awe associated with hunting in prehistoric times. Here, in those places considered to be sacred, generations of Aborigines have continued to make the propitiatory drawings that facilitate the catching of animals. In other spots, it is trees that provide the canvas for these magical images. We watch a Gavingo Aborigine detaching bark from a eucalyptus. Only on this particular bark, according to the Gavingos, can they symbolically depict their protector spirits, the Mimi, demons of nature that take on thread-like form. The bark is heated so that it can be opened and flattened. Then the image of the Mimi is painted on it. Through their portraits, on tree bark, and on the bare rock, the Mimi will use their powers to ensure that the hunting expedition is successful. And after the hunt, there is the ceremonial burning of the magical tree bark images, whereas the rock drawings remain to defy the passing of time. For primitive man, whether our prehistoric ancestor or the Australian Aborigine who also lives by hunting, art is not a product unto itself. It is always inextricably linked with rituals and myths. When the work is completed, the man who has created it feels that the image that has emerged from his hands no longer belongs to him. It is the Mimi who is to assist the hunter who now owns the drawing. The celebrant takes the two ritual sticks and starts to perform a musical formula of consecration. Through the magical powers of the Mimi, this consecration flows from the rock into the weapons prepared by the hunter. It goes without saying that the Aborigine does not rely on his weapons only because they have been made sacred by the magic-imbued image. His trust in his weapons is also based on his ability to increase their effectiveness. He uses a special device to endow his spear with greater thrust and penetrating power. The prey is not easy to catch, and the magic wrought by drawings and musical rhythms calls for insistent, tireless application. If the prey manages to escape, despite days of pursuit, then it is necessary to resort to the aid of the most powerful magic of all: fire. In the most isolated savanna of Australia, the archives of time have caught unique moments that re-evoke the magic used by our caveman ancestors, when hunting always meant fatigue and the risk of disappointment. To ward off that risk, to be able to satisfy the hunger of the group by killing a prey, was and is possible only through the goodwill of the Mimi. To work a magic spell is equivalent to believing that magic works. For among primitive peoples, there is no such thing as chance. Fear and hunger will not touch those who are loyal to the Mimi, that silently watch over their last faithful devotees. We have come to another primitive savanna surviving on our planet, in southern Africa. We have come here to share some of the experiences of the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. Short in stature, but full of courage, though extremely poor, at least in material terms. He still clothes himself with the skins of the animals he catches. The Bushmen live in small groups in simple huts made of leaves, branches, and moss. Once in a while, when the catch is not enough to feed his family, when the last bone has been gnawed, he picks the berries that appear in the desert after the infrequent downpours of rain. As the season of green grass, when it is easy to find berries, is short-lived, just a few days a year in January, hunting continues to be the near-daily activity that is the key to survival. But in the vastness of the savanna, cunning and physical effort are not always sufficient to catch a wild animal. And so, the Bushman, too, believes in the power of a magic ritual to save him from starvation. The ostrich mime. One of the most curious tricks used by primitive groups to catch wild animals. A young boy is dressed up in ostrich plumes to be the star of a hunting expedition that is pure theater. The fake ostrich gets as near as he can to the animals of the savannah. His imitation of the typical behavior of ostriches is apparently convincing. Slowly, he tries to induce as many animals as possible to make their way to where the hunters are lying in wait, armed with bows and poison-tipped arrows. But the Bushmen will not take part in such a difficult enterprise unless first a propitiatory ritual has been performed. In this case, the ritual consists in shooting arrows at the remains of a gazelle previously sacrificed and left in the middle of a ring marked out on the ground. The ring obviously has an occult significance. The arrows, shot symbolically in this ritual, will eventually have the power to hit the finest animal in the herd, which the two men intend to track down. And in fact, after this ritual killing, the prey will seem to be more vulnerable. This chant also has a magical function. It commands the arrow to become heavier. The bushman knows only too well how light his arrows are. In fact, they must be shot in such a way that their flight describes a parabola, so as to fall almost vertically with increased powers of penetration. A scratch is enough, however, for the poison is very strong, and the animal is paralyzed before it hits the ground. In the meantime, the feathered mime has been slowly driving his fellow ostriches in the right direction. And with them, thanks to their unintentional cooperation, he has also managed to drive other groups of animals towards the scrub, where the two hunters spring into action, splitting up to increase their striking potential. Incredibly, the chosen prey reacts as if it were trapped in the magic circle. The spell cast by instrumental magic does its work, and the arrow chant has indeed made the weapon infallible and deadly. The Amazonian forest, its wild inaccessibility now almost totally tamed by highways, airports, oil rigs, and pioneer settlements. The last Amerindi Indians flee upstream before the invaders, seeking remote, uncontaminated areas, ever deeper into the interior. We are following a Yanomami tribe belonging to the Vaika group along the upper Orinoco, a river that is 7,000 kilometers long. These Vaika are, together with the Australian Aborigines and the Bushmen of Africa, the last hunters and fishers of our planet to practice instrumental magic as an essential element in the catching of an animal, as essential as our weapons. A magic whose very tangible effects we will soon be seeing. After every fresh move, the Vaika hunters conquer their fear of new places by painting their bodies and faces, a symbolic act of identification with the environment. The wavy lines represent the water of the river and its currents. Perhaps the black patches on the skin are intended to express the mystery of unknown waters that must be fished. To shake off this fear of the unknown, the Vaika must make contact with the spirits of the animals and plants of the forest. The only way to do this is by being freed from the restrictions of the senses, by leaving the body, a journey that only the bravest men of the group make, by blowing a drug called yopo up their nostrils. The powder is forced by the blowpipe into the mucous membranes of the nose, and so acts directly on the brain. Yopo is a powerful hallucinogenous narcotic that immediately induces a trance-like state. The most fortunate of the Indians taking part in the ceremonial drugging will be able to distinguish, in the midst of his hallucinations, the secret signs indicating the whereabouts of a liana that has a magic power. This plant contains a substance capable of stunning the fish in the river. For the Vaika, such an effect can only be magical in origin. In actual fact, the magic lies in their own knowledge of nature. Thanks to this heritage of experience and intuitions, they are masters of the world of plants, knowing all their secrets, all the benefits and risks of herbs and roots, fruit and flowers, and in this case, of lianas. In the bend of a small river, where the current is less strong, the pounded lianas are dipped in the water, making it bubble, the effect of the poison, or if we prefer, of magic. One thing is not subject to interpretation, however. The fish float up to the surface and are easily caught with the hands. As soon as the instrumental magic begins to work, the women collect the catch. The fibers of the magic liana obviously cause a chemical reaction in the water that reduces its oxygen content. The fish are immediately affected and are forced to emerge, gasping for air, only to be caught without a struggle. And the reason the women do not kill them there and then is that they believe the effects of the magic would wear off if blood were to be shed in the water. give thanks to the spirits of the river and the forest who have allowed so much food to be gathered. The men will feast and dance. They will perform their simple dance in the middle of the chapuno, which they have erected in haste. They intend to stay on here for some time, for the area abounds in game and fish. The dance is an act of thanksgiving, as we said. Thanksgiving for the food obtained through magic. And the ritual continues around the bamboo poles topped by cane outlines of fish, which the fishermen take it in turn to touch with reverence. An unsophisticated mime that is crystal clear in its intention. The world has 7 blue oceans, and one that is green. The ocean of the tropical forest, whose dense, luxuriant vegetation still hides one of the most secret pages of the archives of time.